when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett calmly slid a manila folder across the table toward Ivanka Trump on live TV. No one expected it to spark one of the year's most explosive political moments. It was a Tuesday night, 8:05 p.m., inside Studio 4. At WCN headquarters in Dallas, Texas, the cameras framed the scene perfectly. Crockett on the left, Ivanka Trump on the right, veteran host Colin Brandt in the center. The topic: political families and ethics in American leadership. Colin opened with a deceptively simple question: do family ties in politics help, or do they corrupt? Crockett kept her hands folded, her tone steady. When public service becomes a family business, there's a risk people stop asking if the job's being done well and start assuming the position belongs to you by bloodline. Ivanka smiled tightly. Experience, whether in business or politics, should be valued. Families who've served for decades bring wisdom, connections, and the ability to get things done. It was polite, but tense. Both women traded points. On taxes, transparency, and influence, Crockett sharp and precise, Ivanka polished and confident. The crowd reacted evenly. Then Colin asked, "Congresswoman Crockett, you've been outspoken about transparency. Do you believe all public figures are honest with the American people?" Crockett didn't look at him. She looked at Ivanka. "Not all of them. And some have more to hide than they'd like the public to know." Ivanka tilted her head. Is that directed at me? "Your family's history speaks for itself," Crockett replied. "But there are things the public hasn't heard, things that cross a line most Americans would never tolerate." A murmur swept the room. "Are you suggesting you have evidence of misconduct?" Colin asked. "Yes," Crockett said evenly. "And I'm prepared to share it tonight." The air seemed to tighten. Ivanka's smirk faltered. "That's absurd. If this is some stunt, this isn't a stunt," Crockett interrupted, sliding the manila folder forward. "These are communications and testimonies from people who've worked closely with the Trump organization. They paint a very different picture of your relationship with your father than the one you've sold to the public." Ivanka leaned forward, her voice sharpening. "You think tossing around lies will make you relevant? This is politics at its ugliest." The folder sat between them like a live wire. Crockett didn't flinch. The American people have a right to know when their leaders' judgment might be compromised desperately when personal relationships influence decisions at the highest levels. A flicker of irritation or maybe panic crossed Ivanka's face. She glanced toward the cameras. There would be no controlling the narrative now. Colin's tone was suddenly more cautious. "These are serious allegations. Our viewers deserve clarity." "I agree," Crockett said. "That's why I'm ready to go through these, line by line." Ivanka shook her head, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. No one in the room was thinking about dignity anymore. They were thinking about that folder and how far Jasmine Crockett was willing to go to get the truth out. And this was only the beginning. Every move could end the game. Colin tried to reset the tone before things boiled over. "Before we get into specifics, let's keep this broad for now. We owe the viewers a balanced conversation." Ivanka seized the opening, her voice soft and deliberate. "My family has been in the public eye for decades. We've endured every rumor, every political hit job imaginable, and here I am still committed to doing work that matters." She let the silence stretch, eyes sweeping over the audience. Jasmine waited for her to finish, then answered with quiet steadiness. "You can be committed and still be held accountable, Miss Trump. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive." The air cooled for a moment. Colin shifted to safer ground. Foreign investments, whether political dynasties could truly resist outside influence. Both women responded civilly, even sharing a quick laugh when Colin joked about family dinners turning into cabinet meetings. But the earlier tension lingered, humming under the surface. That manila folder still sat untouched in front of Jasmine. Ivanka leaned slightly toward her, smiling just enough for the cameras, but speaking low enough for only the mics to catch. You think you're going to score points here, but you're playing a dangerous game. Jasmine didn't blink. The truth isn't a game. Colin moved on. Congresswoman Crockett, you've often spoken about systemic issues in American politics. What would you change first? Transparency, campaign finance reform, and an end to nepotism. If you get a job in politics, it should be because you're qualified, not because your last name opens doors. That's rich coming from someone who's never had to operate a global business under constant media fire. Ivanka shot back. It's easy to throw stones when you've never had to build anything. I've built my career without a safety net, Jasmine replied. There's value in knowing what it's like to start from nothing and still prove yourself every single day, the audience murmured, leaning in. Colin cut in. All right, let's circle back to the folder. Congresswoman, are you saying you have direct evidence the American public hasn't seen? Yes, Ivanka's fingers gripped her chair. Then, let's see it. I'm not afraid of some cherry-picked nonsense. Patience, Jasmine said evenly. Context matters. Without it, people will think it's gossip. This isn't gossip. About whether powerful people are making decisions for themselves instead of the country. Colin nodded. Then give us the background. Jasmine began, calm, measured, describing patterns she'd seen in Congress. Decisions that benefited private business interests. Moments where personal loyalty outweighed national duty. Ivanka leaned back, arms crossed. You're making it sound like some deep conspiracy. People are tired of politics that tear others down instead of building the country up. I'm not here to tear you down, Jasmine said, locking eyes with her. I'm here to hold you to the same standard. As any public servant, if you've done nothing wrong, the evidence will speak for itself. If you have, the public deserves to know. The room seemed smaller now, the air heavier. Colin stayed silent. The audience shifted in their seats. Jasmine rested her palm on the folder. I've given you the courtesy of context. The next part is the specifics. Once I open this, there's no going back. Ivanka's eyes narrowed. Do what you think you have to. The words hung like a dare. Jasmine let her fingers rest just long enough for the cameras to drink it in. Millions were watching. I'm going to start small, Jasmine said finally, her voice almost casual. Think of it as context for what's inside. Go ahead, Colin urged. Back in 2018, during the White House years, multiple staffers reported blurred lines between personal and professional relationships inside the administration. Not rumors, not tabloids. People who were in the room, people who watched decisions get made based on loyalty to family over loyalty to the country. Ivanka's smile was gone. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes never left Jasmine's. Ivanka's tone was ice. Are you accusing me of something specific, or is this just more vague innuendo? I'll be specific, Jasmine said. She reached into the folder and slid a single sheet across the table. The camera zoomed in, just enough for the heading to be legible. Internal Communication, Trump Organization Staff, April 2018. This, Jasmine continued, is a statement from a former senior aide who worked closely with you and your father. In it, they describe conversations about foreign business deals discussed during private family dinners. Conversations that had nothing to do with official policy and everything to do with personal gain. That's ridiculous, Ivanka snapped. You're really going to sit here and act like that's evidence of anything illegal? I said nothing about illegal, Jasmine countered. I'm talking about integrity. When you serve the public, you don't get to blur those lines. You don't get to mix family business with the people's business. Colin leaned forward. To be clear, Congresswoman, this is a first-hand account. Yes, Jasmine said. And there are others. She tapped the folder. The pattern is consistent off the books, meetings. Travel funded through back channels, personal relationships leveraged to bypass official channels altogether. Ivanka leaned in, her voice sharper. So what you've collected is gossip from disgruntled ex-employees, and you're dressing it up as fact. That's beneath you. You can call it gossip if you want, Jasmine said evenly, but these are sworn statements. And when enough people say the same thing, it stops being gossip. It starts looking like the truth. The audience murmured. A ripple of curiosity and discomfort. Colin raised a hand for quiet, but his eyes betrayed the fact that he knew they were sitting on a ratings goldmine. Jasmine slid the page back toward herself. I said I'd start small. That's just context. The real question is how far those blurred lines went. Ivanka's jaw tightened. If you have something, show it. Stop dancing around it. You'll get your wish soon enough, Jasmine replied. But answer me this when public trust is at stake. Do you believe personal relationships should ever influence official decisions? Of course not, Ivanka said crisply. But you're trying to imply something grotesque, and I won't let you smear me on national television. I'm not implying, Jasmine said, preparing to show. The tension was visible. Now, not just in their words, but in their stillness, in the way they stared each other down. Colin finally spoke. We'll continue this in a moment. But for our viewers, these are live allegations, and we have not independently verified the materials being discussed. That's fair, Jasmine said, but every piece of evidence here is documented, dated, and backed by testimony. Viewers can make up their own minds once they see it. Ivanka muttered under her breath, "This is a disgrace." Jasmine didn't respond. She didn't need to. The first stone had been thrown. The cracks were already spreading. Colin straightened. His notes? All right, Congresswoman, you've given us context. Now, if you're ready, what exactly are you alleging here tonight? Jasmine didn't hesitate. She opened the folder and pulled out several thick packets, pages marked with yellow highlighter. Under the lights, they looked heavier than paper. I'm alleging, Jasmine said, that there were interactions between you, Miss Trump, and your father that crossed boundaries most people would consider appropriate both professionally and personally. And I have communications showing those boundaries weren't just blurred, they were erased. Ivanka gave a short, forced laugh. This is outrageous. I should walk off right now. You could, Jasmine replied calmly. But you'd be walking away from a chance to clear your name. You can. Can you give us a specific example from these documents? Yes, Jasmine said. She lifted a page from her folder. This is a copy of text messages exchanged in late 2019. They were retrieved from a personal phone belonging to a former executive assistant at the Trump Organization. In these messages, the assistant describes being ordered to arrange private overnight trips for you and your father trips, never recorded on official schedules and unrelated to any government function. Gasps rippled through the audience. Someone in the front row whispered, "Oh my God." Ivanka's smile vanished, replaced by something colder. You're reading secondhand claims from someone with an axe to grind. That's your smoking gun. That's one piece, Jasmine corrected. The messages mention hotel bookings under false names, private transport that never went through the Secret Service, and travel plans routed around every standard channel. She paused just long enough for the tension to thicken. And that's just the logistics. The personal tone of the exchanges makes it clear these weren't routine business trips. Colin cleared his throat. We need to be careful here. These are serious allegations. I understand, Jasmine said. That's why everything I'm citing has been reviewed by my legal team before I brought it here tonight. Ivanka's voice was sharp now, trembling with anger. So you're saying without saying that you're accusing me of something vile on national television? You don't think that's dangerous? What's dangerous, Jasmine shot back, is letting people with immense power operate without scrutiny because we're too afraid of the backlash. If this were baseless, I wouldn't risk my career to present it here. Colin leaned toward Ivanka. Do you want to respond directly to these claims? Ivanka turned to the camera. This is the lowest point in modern politics. Personal attacks, made-up scandals. No wonder Americans have lost faith in government when this is what elected officials waste their time on. Then she faced Jasmine again. You will regret this. The air in the room pulled tight like a rope. The audience stayed silent, unsure whether to breathe. If the truth costs me politically, so be it, Jasmine said. If the truth hurts you, that's not my problem, it's yours. Colin tried to move on, but the moment was already locked in. Jasmine slipped the page back into her folder, leaving it open on the table, a quiet warning that more was inside. That's enough. For now, she said. But if you keep denying what's in black and white, I'll go deeper. Ivanka stared at her, unreadable. You've just made yourself a lot of enemies, Congresswoman. Better enemies than compromised allies, Jasmine replied. The audience held its breath. This wasn't the peak, it was the climb. Ivanka's voice came back faster, louder, stripped of its usual polish. This is the garbage people are sick of. You act righteous, but you're just dragging my name through the mud. You think Americans want this? They don't care about your folder of lies. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. Then why are you so angry? That question landed harder than any accusation so far. The crowd murmured. Ivanka's cheeks flushed. She jabbed a manicured finger toward Jasmine. Don't twist this around on me. You've crossed a line and I'm not going to sit here. Then don't. Jasmine cut in, calm as stone. But these aren't my words. They're the words of people who worked with you, saw what happened, and decided they couldn't keep quiet. Ivanka gave a sharp, disbelieving laugh. Oh, so now we're trusting anonymous whistleblowers. Please. Everyone knows how easy it is to make up a story for a book deal or a spot on a partisan talk show. Colin raised a hand. Let's know, Colin, Jasmine said, eyes locked on Ivanka. This isn't about ratings. It's about whether the public can trust people who influence the country's decisions. If you're clean, you should have nothing to hide. Ivanka leaned forward, her chair scraping against the floor. You are not going to stand here and question my relationship with my father. It's sick and exactly why people hate Washington. Jasmine said evenly. You'll do anything to score political points. That's rich, she added, still calm, coming from someone who skipped the line and landed in the West Wing without ever running for office. The audience reacted half surprise, half approval. A few claps broke out before Colin raised a hand for quiet. Congresswoman Crockett, he said, I understand you want to hold people accountable, but what if you're wrong? Think about the damage that could cause. If I were wrong. Jasmine replied without hesitation, I'd apologize publicly and own it. But I've reviewed this evidence for months, cross-checked it, and I'm willing to stake my career on its truth. Ivanka leaned back, lips pressed tight. When this blows up in your face, remember, you went after me not for truth, but for humiliation. Jasmine's voice softened slightly. If humiliation comes from the truth, that's on the person who lived it. The studio air felt thick. Colin tried steering the talk toward policy, but Ivanka's tone shifted, more desperate than angry. Do you know what this does to my family? To my children? You're dragging them into something they have nothing to do with. Jasmine paused, then spoke carefully. The actions of adults can't withstand public scrutiny. Maybe those actions shouldn't have happened. The audience applauded, brief but telling. Ivanka's eyes narrowed. This isn't over. I'm counting on it, Jasmine said. Colin looked straight at the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, this is live television. Emotions are high. We'll take a short break. The lights dimmed, but no one moved. Eyes darted between the two women. Jasmine sat still, expression unreadable. Ivanka turned away, speaking quickly to a producer. When cameras came back on, the atmosphere had shifted, tension mixed with expectation. The crowd leaned forward. "Welcome back," Colin said. Before the break, Congresswoman Crockett made serious claims about Ivanka Trump's past. "Miss Trump, would you like to respond?" "Our producers tell me social media is already buzzing." Ivanka's smile was tight. "Of course it is. That's what happens when someone throws baseless accusations on live TV. But facts matter more than clicks." "They do," Jasmine said, leaning forward, "which is why I brought them." A ripple of knowing laughter passed through the audience. Colin pressed on. "Congresswoman, you've given one example of these blurred boundaries. Is there more you can share tonight?" "There is," Jasmine said, pulling a page from her folder. "This statement comes from a former event coordinator for several private Trump gatherings. They were told to avoid official logs for certain events, ones that involved overnight accommodations for just you and your father, Miss Trump, far from public appearances." Ivanka's eyes hardened. "You're skating dangerously close to slander." "I'm not skating anywhere," Jasmine replied. "I'm standing on documented testimony." The crowd leaned in. Some in the front row exchanged knowing glances. Ivanka tried to pivot. "We could be talking about jobs, inflation, safety. Real issues. Instead, you're obsessed with character assassination." "Character is a real issue," Jasmine said, "especially when it shapes the decisions that affect all of us." The applause was louder now, and it lingered. Even Colin seemed caught off guard. "I think we need to acknowledge something," Colin said, looking between them. "This conversation has clearly struck a chord. People in this audience are reacting. Our producers tell me the online comments are what a shock," Ivanka cut in, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Trash gets clicks, always has." "That's an interesting way to describe sworn testimony," Jasmine replied evenly. The tension felt alive now, humming in the studio air. Ivanka shifted in her seat, crossing and uncrossing her legs, casting practiced glances toward the cameras as if appealing directly to viewers at home. But the charm that had worked early in the program was fading fast. The laughs and polite claps were no longer hers. They were landing squarely with Jasmine's calm, grounded replies. Colin seemed to notice the shift. "Congresswoman, before we move forward, can you confirm that all of this material has been vetted by your legal team for authenticity?" "Yes," Jasmine said firmly. "Every single page." Ivanka scoffed under her breath, loud enough for the microphones to catch it. Jasmine didn't even look at her, keeping her focus on Colin. "People can try to discredit me. They can call me names, but they can't erase the fact that this evidence exists, and it's not going away." That line drew the loudest applause, yet not deafening, but decisive. Jasmine had the room, and from the flicker in Ivanka's eyes, she knew it too. But audience control was only half the fight. The next step was making sure the entire country saw what was happening here. Colin glanced toward the control booth, as if silently asking for direction, but no one in his earpiece was stepping in. The debate had slipped out of its neat format. Now it was raw, unfiltered, and dangerously compelling. "All right, Colin," began, trying to steer them back. "We're going to move into our final policy segment." "No," Ivanka cut him off, her voice sharp enough to slice the air. "We're not moving on until we address this head-on. Jasmine has sat here for nearly an hour, spewing baseless lies about me and my family. And I'm not letting her get away with it." "If they were baseless," Jasmine said, tilting her head slightly, "you wouldn't be this rattled." The audience chuckled and clapped. Colin raised his hands for calm, but Ivanka pushed over him. You know exactly what you're doing trying to score headlines. Get your little viral moment, drag my name through the dirt so you can play hero to your followers. I'm not here for a viral moment, Jasmine said, leaning forward. I'm here because the public has a right to know if the people influencing policy are doing so for the country or for themselves. You're disgusting, Ivanka snapped. I'm honest, Jasmine replied. That's the difference. Gasps and applause collided in the crowd. Colin tried to regain order. Okay, let's keep this civil. You invited me here knowing I'd speak on the record, Jasmine said, cutting in calmly. If you wanted a surface-level debate, we could have had coffee. But you put me on national television, so I'm telling the truth on national television. Ivanka's gestures grew sharper, frustration spilling over. Truth. This is your version of truth, backed by people who probably don't even exist. That's a dangerous claim, Jasmine said. Are you saying that people who sign sworn statements under penalty of perjury aren't real? Ivanka froze just long enough for the pause to register with anyone paying attention. I'm saying you can twist anything to sound like something it's not, she finally replied. Then why not release your own evidence to counter it? Jasmine asked. The question hung in the air. Unanswered. Colin tried again. We're going to shift too. I'm not shifting anywhere, Ivanka shot back, turning fully toward Jasmine. You want to play prosecutor. Fine, but you'd better be ready when this comes back on you. Threats don't change facts, Jasmine said, her voice steady. Something snapped in the room. The audience was no longer polite or restrained. They were leaning forward, openly reacting. This wasn't two people trading talking points anymore. This was a clash of wills, live and unedited. And Colin's usual tactics, cutting in, redirecting, weren't working. Every time he tried to move forward, the storm pulled them right back in. One exchange pulled the conversation straight back into the fire. Sensing the crowd slipping from her grasp, Ivanka leaned toward the camera. To everyone watching at home, this is politics in America now. False allegations, smear campaigns, and people like Jasmine Crockett willing to ruin reputations just to get ahead. Jasmine didn't miss a beat. And to everyone watching at home, this is exactly why so many have lost faith in those in power. When confronted with the truth, they attack the messenger instead of addressing the message. The applause was louder, longer. It wasn't just approval, it was momentum. Colin sat back, hands flat on the table. For a moment, he didn't even try to rein them in. The broadcast had slipped past his control, and part of him knew this was gold. 4. Ratings. Jasmine glanced at the audience, then back at Ivanka. We can sit here all night if you want. But sooner or later, this evidence will come to light, whether it's tonight or in the days ahead. And no amount of shouting will stop that. Ivanka exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Unbelievable. Believe it, Jasmine replied. Colin leaned forward, his tone resigned. All right. Clearly, we're not ending this segment neatly. Before we break, Miss Trump, Congresswoman Crockett, one final thought each. Ivanka's voice hardened. My final thought. This is a pathetic stunt. It says far more about Jasmine than it does about me. Jasmine didn't wait for her cue. My final thought. The truth doesn't care about status, last names, or family wealth. And the truth always wins. The crowd erupted. Applause, cheers, even a whistle from the back row. Colin glanced at the control room, then into the camera. We'll be right back. But the commercial break wouldn't cool things down. It would only feed the fire. When they returned, the camera angles shifted slightly, subtly, framing the moment like history in real time. The audience leaned forward now, eyes fixed on the table, waiting for the next strike. Colin steadied his voice, though fatigue edged the words. We're in the last minutes of tonight's broadcast. I want to thank both guests for what's clearly been a passionate exchange. No interruptions, closing statements. Ivanka went first, carefully. Measured, these allegations are lies. They're reckless, dangerous, and deeply hurtful. I've spent my life working to build businesses, honor my family name, and contribute to this country. It's easy to make accusations on live TVs, harder to live with the damage those lies cause. She looked straight into the lens. To the viewer's eye, hope you see this for what it is. Political theater meant to grab headlines, not serve the public. Her applause was polite but thin, a few claps falling flat in the quiet. Colin nodded. "Thank you, Miss Trump." Congresswoman Crockett, closing statement. Jasmine leaned forward, forearms on the table, her voice calm and steady. "I didn't come here to win an argument. I came here to tell the truth. And the truth makes people uncomfortable, especially those in power. But Americans deserve leaders who are transparent, accountable, and willing to answer hard questions. We cannot ask citizens to trust their government while privilege shields the powerful from scrutiny." She paused, letting the silence work for her. "The documents I've shared tonight are only a fraction of what's been collected. This isn't gossip, it's about whether decisions affecting millions were shaped by personal ties that should never have crossed certain lines. If that's uncomfortable to hear, imagine living under it." The applause was sharp and sustained. A cheer broke from the back row. Ivanka's jaw tightened, but she stayed silent. Jasmine kept her gaze locked on Colin, waiting for him to close things out. Colin glanced between the two women, fully aware that however he ended it, people would remember this moment long after the credits rolled. "Thank you both for being here tonight," he said evenly. "This conversation will no doubt continue beyond the studio, and I'm sure the public will have plenty to say." The outro music began to swell, but just before the cameras cut, Jasmine added a final tight, unrehearsed line, not forced, but dropped into the air like a challenge. And for those watching at home, truth doesn't vanish just because someone denies it. The screen faded to the closing graphic, but the room didn't exhale. Applause kept going even after the broadcast ended. Audience members reached for their phones, recording quick clips, texting friends, and posting live reactions. Ivanka rose quickly, speaking in clipped tones to her aides. Jasmine stayed seated a moment longer, shaking hands with a few who approached the stage. From the corner, Colin leaned toward a producer and muttered, "This one's going to blow up online in minutes." He was right. Before Jasmine even left the building, the first clips were flooding social media. Her line about threats not changing facts was already circulating, shared by political commentators and casual viewers alike. The moment Ivanka accused her of running a smear campaign was being replayed in slow motion, captions added for impact. But the biggest clip, the one climbing in views by the second, was Jasmine leaning in and saying, "If they were baseless, you wouldn't be this rattled." That snippet alone drew thousands of comments praising her composure under pressure. By the time she reached her car, her phone was buzzing non-stop texts from colleagues, missed calls from reporters, and emails flagged urgent. She knew she'd started something big, but this was just the beginning. Tonight's audience had chosen sides, but the real verdict would come when the entire country woke up to watch. By 11:15 p.m., the exchange had escaped political Twitter and entered mainstream entertainment feeds, late-night show threads, and even sports forums. The hashtag #CrockettVs, IVANKA, shot past celebrity gossip trends in under an hour. Cable networks replayed highlights before their anchors even got on air. On one screen, pundits debated whether Jasmine had gone too far. On another, a split screen compared Ivanka's tight-lipped anger with Jasmine's calm, conversational delivery, the kind of visual TV producers dream of. On TikTok, her "if they were baseless" line became a trending audio. People used it over clips of politicians, bosses, and even fictional TV characters. Within hours, it had taken on a life of its own. In Washington, staffers from both parties were texting each other. "Did you see it?" And she actually said it on live TV by morning. The numbers were staggering, minus 18 million views, hundreds of thousands of comments, and 72% of respondents in one poll saying Jasmine had won the exchange. Major papers ran their own takes. Crockett challenges Trump legacy in live. Confrontation: The Washington Sentinel and Congresswoman drops bombshell on Ivanka Trump, the Austin Herald. Even Trump-friendly outlets had to acknowledge the size of the reaction. Ivanka's team released a brief statement mid-morning, calling the broadcast a blatant attempt at character assassination and promising to explore legal options. But it didn't address the specifics: the hotel bookings, the off-the-record trips, or the testimonies Jasmine referenced. That silence only fueled more speculation. Jasmine didn't hit the morning show circuit. Instead, she posted a single message: "I stand by every word I said last night." Accountability is not optional. No follow-up, no sparring. The restraint made her look even more in control. Analysts noted the contrast. Ivanka appeared emotional and reactive. Jasmine prepared and unshakable by lunchtime. Hashtags like hashtag stand with Crockett, hashtag truth on live TV, and hashtag how rattled were trending. Merch sellers printed shirts with her one-liners. The real impact, though, was in the quieter spaces: emails to congressional offices, messages to reporters, and anonymous tips to newsrooms. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was the spark of something larger. As the clips spread online, more people began stepping forward with their own accounts. A respected investigative journalist tweeted, "My inbox is exploding this morning." If even half these leads are real, this story is nowhere near finished.
Inside
Ivanka Trump's circle, tension was high. A source close to her team described heated debates over whether to strike back at Jasmine Crockett with counterclaims, or to simply wait, hoping the news cycle would move on. Neither strategy looked promising. Meanwhile, Crockett's supporters were calling the moment a turning point, not just for her career, but for political accountability in the media age. They praised her refusal to back down, her calm under pressure, and her willingness to bring documented evidence into the spotlight. One viral post summed it up: "This is why they don't put people like Jasmine Crockett on these shows, because she doesn't follow their script." The most telling sign of the shift was the silence from Ivanka's usual defenders. No press conferences, no fiery tweets. Just a noticeable absence, as if even her allies were waiting to see whether more evidence would surface before speaking. The real test of Crockett's victory, however, would come in the days ahead, once the headlines faded and the political fallout became clear. The morning after the broadcast, Washington felt different. Not in polling numbers or legislation, but in how people talked about power and who had the right to question it. By 9 a.m., Crockett's office had already fielded hundreds of calls from constituents thanking her for speaking up. Others from reporters requesting comment, a few from political colleagues offering quiet congratulations along with a warning: be ready. A storm's coming. Meanwhile, Ivanka's team held an emergency strategy meeting. Some advisors pushed for a full-scale counterattack: press conferences, interviews, even statements from Donald Trump himself. Others warned that fighting too hard in public would only amplify Crockett's claims. Back in Texas, Crockett's district office buzzed with activity as TV crews parked outside. Staff scrambled to manage media requests and sift through a flood of emails. By midday, to national news outlets confirmed they were launching investigations into the documents Crockett had referenced. One anchor bluntly said on air, "If those documents are authentic, they could be politically devastating for the Trump family." Across the country, the public weighed in at diners, in barbershops, over group texts. Again and again, the same point surfaced. Crockett hadn't flinched. she had stepped into hostile territory, faced down a well-connected public figure, and refused to be intimidated. The most shared clip, her telling Ivanka, "If they were baseless, you wouldn't be." This rattled hit 40 million views in 2 days. For Crockett, this wasn't about going viral. It was about changing the rules. She believed political families had long avoided real scrutiny because questioners feared the backlash. She had just proven that the backlash could be survived with preparation, evidence, and resolve. That night, she appeared on a late-night news segment. She didn't offer new accusations. Instead, she repeated her central point. This isn't about me versus Long. This isn't about me versus Ivanka Trump. This is about whether we have one set of rules for the powerful and another for everyone else. If you care about fairness, accountability has to apply to everyone. When asked if she feared political retaliation, Crockett gave a faint smile. "If telling the truth costs me my career, then I'm in the wrong career. I work for the people who elected me, not for the comfort of those in power." Over the following days, the story deepened. News sources spoke with reporters, confirming parts of Crockett's claims and hinting at even more unreported details. Ivanka's public appearances dwindled, limited to controlled events with no press questions. Her allies shifted attention to other topics, clearly trying to change the subject by week's end. Crockett's approval ratings in her district had climbed, and her national name recognition had doubled, an unusual feat for a rank-and-file member of Congress. Still, she knew the real victory wasn't in the polls or the hashtags. It was in the conversations unfolding nationwide about accountability, privilege, and the principle that no one should be too powerful to face questions. One evening, as she left her office, a woman in her 60s stopped her on the sidewalk. "I watched you," she said softly. "You made me feel like maybe the truth still matters." Crockett thanked her, allowing herself a rare smile. The lesson was clear. Courage isn't always about shouting the loudest. Sometimes it's about sitting in a room full of people who want you to fold in, refusing. It's about speaking the truths others are too afraid to say. As Crockett wrote in her final post on the matter, "The truth has a way of surviving. You can deny it, attack it, but you can't erase it. If you care about this country, you stand with it, even when it's inconvenient." The fight for accountability, she knew, was far from over.